Hi there, my name is Jared Fenwick and this is Nomadic Oasis, and I just want to show you this new barbecue grill modification. This came out of an old barbecue and I wanted to adapt it to hang from my Fishy Thing tripod system. So it folds flat and opens up with lots of space in there. We've got fiddles all the way around to keep the pan on there. And that easily accepts a 12-inch pan. So there's lots of space in between these hoops to do your business. Looks pretty good. Okay, so here we are. We finished the grill modification. And here we've got a 12-inch cast iron pan and a spatula. So that dimension of grate easily handles a 12-inch pan. And this arch here, purpose of this arch is there's all kinds of space in here. Whereas if it was a V, you'd be working inside this little area. So now we can do all our stuff here. And so the weight of the pan here is going to determine how flat that bottom is. So, once you're going, if your oil is running off to one side here, then you just shift the weight until it's just right. And because we have fiddles, we're not going to lose the pan. So, because things are never perfect when you're cooking over a wood fire. So these fiddles increase the thickness a tiny bit. You can see it locks it in there. Nice tidy looking package. This is a barbecue grate, 14.5 by 12. The barbecue died and the grate was salvaged. Pretty sure it's stainless steel, even though it really doesn't look like it. And this is galvanized steel from an election sign. So it was just collected off a lawn after the election was over. I'll be stripping the galvanizing off so it doesn't give anybody heavy metal poisoning when we cook with this. So those are the two materials. Okay, so this is the shape I'm trying to achieve. So when I do this, I get 28 inches. But when I bow it out like that, I got 29.25. So the reason I want to do this is when I bring it up like this, it will give a more area in here. So when you're putting your frying pan or your tongs, if it's a V, there's less space in there. So it will still lay flat this way. Just give me a little more room. So I just line that up like that, pinch that real tight. 29, not including the rings at the end that are going to hold on to that. And I'm going to give myself 4 inches apiece on either side. I'll bend that out straight since it's in the wrong spot. Then I'll catch up with you. Okay, so I tried a couple different ways to see how this would go. This one is just straight with the idea of, so this is the obvious way, right? You roll them down, then leave them open and crimp them. But when you crimp them like that, you're not going to get a loop that's as round as, say, I didn't cut the tails off here because they're just scraps. But so the other idea was to bring them in here. And I was just going to twist them down like that, 90. I just kept twisting it until I had a really round section. I got a kink in there. Still got the flat spot in there, so I'll keep going. That's good enough. Nice round circle. I guess I'll measure from the halfway point on that ring, right where my fingernail creases that, and then mark it. I just need to open this up to the point I can get that grill rod through there. Just take a cold chisel or a screwdriver. Better to wedge this open than to bend it. So I've got both of them, or they'll clear that rod. Better to do that now than after you've got multiple bends, like the kink and then the other loop. Yeah, your grate's not going to be the same as this one, so just lay the rope out and measure that. And that was 29, that one. Okay, so this is my mark here, and I've placed that mark. You know, once I've put some pressure on this rod and tightened it up and used the stop, then the point of contact with that rod is right here. I'm going to bend that from the short side. I'll show you that in a minute. Anyway, so on the other end of this rod is this one, and it's oriented like that, horizontal to the ground. So I've been doing that to get a hold of it because it's too short for good leverage. So now I'm just making sure that the other end is parallel to the ground, and the direction I'm bending it is going to be the same as the other end. I'm just going to do the other one while I'm at it, making sure my red mark is the point of contact. Okay, now I'm just going to verify that that's parallel to the ground, and it wasn't. It's not super critical that, because you can twist those to line up later on. So I'm just going to spread this one again. Well, that's how easy it can be. Okay, so I took a 90-degree surface here, right up against that plywood, and butted those two up, and then took this and eyeballed it from the top, and they weren't perfectly lined up. So what I did was stick it in the vise, clamp it, and give it a tap here until that curled it, and now they line up perfect. So make sure they're perfectly lined up so that when we crimp them, your grill's going to hang flat. I'm just going to get rid of the zinc. So I'm taking some emery cloth, 80 grit, and just squeezing tightly and rubbing that and ripping that zinc off. And I'm doing that outside in the breeze, you know, for the zinc poisoning thing. Alright, so I was wanting to measure this and divide it in half. It's actually a little harder than you might anticipate. So that mark right there, and then I put another mark at the same point right there, that little red spot, you know, where that round stops and transits to flat. I put a mark, and then I took the tape, anyway, divide it in half, and then put a mark, and I just lined these two up exactly with the right angle and transferred the mark. Nothing too difficult there. Okay, so right, this thing right here is a 3/4 inch piece of round stock aluminum. So I'm gonna bend these with the loop facing up on both ends, up, and then I'm gonna bend it horizontal, so the bend here and the loops are at 90 degrees. Now I just place that in the middle and bend it. It'll be really simple. So I clipped that, kept adjusting it until that was at 90. Now I'm just going to bend these back. Just trying to make sure these are parallel, or they're not. So I'm just going to try to make sure they're parallel now. Otherwise the grill won't hang. I'm going to fuss with that. That's about right. And both hooks coming off on the same side. Do the same to the other one. I call that good. I really wanted one ring at the top here instead of two pieces. Like, these are going to fold up and meet here and put the hook over two. It's nicer to have one. But I just wasn't able to come up with a method to do that without having a piece here that you could lose. So that's how I'm doing it. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm going to put the right peak. I want a bit of a Gothic arch, like a fat Gothic arch. So I'm just going to tweak it until it goes right. Very light gauge rod, so bending it by hand as possible. This part is all humming and hawing, so now suit yourself how you want to do this. If you're doing 100 of them, obviously you're going to be setting up a proper jig type scenario. Basically, I just want the biggest gap I can get inside that. Man, yeah, I really should have put a hard bend there. You don't learn everything all in one go. Sometimes you can't afford to sit there and think about everything for ages, trying to predict the future. Just get out there and get her done, and sometimes you learn by just doing it wrong. So I wanted to put a kink in that, and was having trouble. Ended up putting a kink in that one. What I did was put a piece of round stock in there. You want it to just drop into the center, like that. So after I kinked it, I just stuck it in the vise and closed it, and overbent it some, since I really did want that notch in there and I just wasn't getting it any other way. So I haven't crimped these eyes yet. But it's not hanging perfectly level, but I did get it so that it was folding within the frame, and I did get a nice dimple here so that it will hang in that slot. So I'm going to crimp these down since they pop off still. Oh, before I forget, something you do want on these hanging grills is what's called a fiddle on a boat. So your frying pan sits on top, and this rod is going to stop the pan from bumping off, or a hot dog from rolling off. Now I was thinking of adding one right here, so that when you roll that up, it's got a bar coming across that for a nice fiddle. So this is the shape of the hoop I made. Got a little notch right here for to make it hang better, so it'll be more solidly located. And we got a nice wide hoop here so that when we're working inside here with our spatula and our pan and whatnot, that we got lots of room. So we bent the eye there, and we're just going to slide them on like that. And now I'm going to crimp them. So I'm just going to use vice grips because they got a significant mechanical advantage here. So I just bent it from a few different angles in order to keep it circular. If you just randomly crimp that on there, you could get an oval instead of a circle. So that's it. I'm just making sure these rails here are on the top side so they act a bit like a fiddle. Keep your pot from sliding off. So, of course, the vice grip's kind of bit in there and made a couple sharp edges. So if you drag your finger over there, you might scrape yourself, cut yourself. So just make sure there's no sharp projections. Okay, so now I'm making the fiddles, which is going to look about like that. And if I get it right, they'll still fold flat. So this part is not mandatory, but it is recommended. It will keep all your stuff from coming off the grill. If you dump one of your meals in the sand, don't be complaining I didn't tell you this is better, because it's going to be better. So I just got a couple rods here. I put 2 loops on. So I showed you how to do that. I bent the loop, then I cut it off with a hacksaw, then I wedged it open with a screwdriver and a mallet, then I cut the sharp edges off, and now they'll pass over the rod. So now what I need to do is, when this folds flat, it's going to go inside here. So that means the entire double loop thing has to be shorter than inside these rods here. So what I did was I found the point of contact on my jig, which is where the straight line transits to the circle, and put a mark. Must have been on the other one. Anyway, I put a mark on that, and then went from that mark to the back of the stop, and that turned out to be. Then I put this in here, made a mark. Maybe you want to see that. So I butted that loop up against the other side, made a mark with the outside of the mark being on the inside here. Then I put another mark at 3/16 here, and now that establishes my point of contact. I want this side of the red line to be my point of contact with this bolt. And I'm going to crimp these on the end and bend it around at that point. Okay, now just make sure the other eye is parallel to the floor. And make sure I pull pretty hard. I'm going to take that off and test it right now, just to make sure, because now is the time to adjust it if it's wrong. So I discovered that I'm 1/8 of an inch too long. So I'm adjusting my point of contact here down about 1/8. Now it's 1/8 too short. Okay, that's about as right as I'm going to get. It's a tiny bit short. I'm just going to twist that blade kind of parallel to the rod, the cut. Now I'll just spread that, deburr it, and we got a fiddle. So it's a tad short, so I'm going to try to open that up just a bit. Okay, so I wanted it just a hair shorter. So that means I'm going to add a bit more length. Or sorry, I'll be removing a bit more of this straight section. And we're pretty much bang on there, so I'm going to finish my loop to the point where I get a nice complete round circle, no flat spots. So here's something I learned. If we get the right size bolt, find something just a bit bigger than your desired rod to crimp, then just bend that rod around, cut the appropriate gap, and then there's less fussing around. I got my loop in the vise there, and I'm using a scrap of the same rod as a depth stop, and then I'm putting my vice grips up against them. Crimp. It's going to bend this blade a bit so it's parallel with the upper rod here. Okay, so now I'm just going to slip this on, making sure the bar is on the top side. Okay, that didn't seem to shorten the rod any when I crimped that. That looked pretty good. Just hang it on there. And we're ready to do some frying, whatever, grilling. And we want to raise the temperature. Just lift that cam up there. To raise it, we do that. So pretty easy, right?